Welcome to Access Tech Academy, the best online platform for inclusive tech learning.
Lesson 5. Techniques for navigating large regions of data. Imagine you are given an Excel spreadsheet to work with, and the spreadsheet contains multiple rows and columns. How do you navigate from one end of the data to another end? How do you move from the first column to the last column, or the first row to the last row? Imagine you have a file or a data range that starts from A1 and ends in M100. That is 100 rows and 13 columns down to cell A100. That is the first row and the last row. Or you want to move from cell A1, which is the first column, to cell M1, which is the last column. How do you go about it? Do you use your down arrow to move to the last row, or you use your right arrow? Keep pressing your right arrow till you get to the last column. This is quite frustrating, I must say, if you have to use or press any of the navigational keys, any of the 4 arrow keys multiple times to get to where you are going, to get to any part of the data. It's quite frustrating and time consuming, and this is not the essence of Excel. This is not why Excel was created. Excel was created to simplify things, to simplify processes, to make things a lot faster, than usual. So what I will be teaching you today, or explaining to you today, is how to move from one end of the data to another end, in order to make our work pretty fast or faster. What you will normally do, in 2 minutes, you should use with Excel techniques, you should achieve the same results under 1 second or under 2 seconds. So work with me as I take you through the process. So now I have a spreadsheet before me, and the spreadsheet contains 4 columns and 53 rows. So I'm currently in cell A1.
A1. Name A1.
So name A1. So moving to the right to the next column.
Week B1.
Week.
Score C1.
Scores.
Comment D1.
Comment D1. So now this one is pretty easy to navigate from left to right because I have only 4 columns. So let me go back to cell A1.
Score week B. Name A1.
Now I told you that I have 53 rows. So how do I get to the last row? Do I keep pressing the down arrow?
David Yesu Pini, Rafael A4.
These are different names.
Ordetio, Rafael A6, Antica A7. Stanley A8.
Stanley, I'm just in A8. That is the 8th row. And I'm going to row 53. So that is a lot of time. And imagine I have 1,000 rows. How long do you think it will take me to keep pressing down arrow? So as a blind person who needs to, or who has to depend on keyboard to navigate, it's quite frustrating, time consuming and annoying, wasting a whole lot of time doing what you can actually or you can actually use just 1 second or do under 2 seconds. You are using 10 minutes, 5 minutes, or even 1 hour to do what you can actually do in split second. So now let me go back to A1.
Name A1.
So Excel has these very fantastic techniques, shortcuts that you can use to jump from top of a data range, top of a data region to the bottom of the data region. Look at lift. When you are inside the lift, you start from the first floor and you are going to the 14th floor. So compared to when you have to take the staircase, you know how time consuming how energy wasting, how tiring it is. So that is exactly what these techniques will do for you. It will help you reduce the time you spend navigating. So what are these shortcuts? Very simple shortcuts. So I'm
Name A1.
naming A1. So I want to, how do I know where this data stops? How do I know the last row on this data? So instead of me pressing down arrow up to the last row, I will just simply press Control down arrow. So pressing Control down arrow will move me from A1 up to A53, which is the last row. Let's do that. Hear it again. I'm in A1.
A1. Name A1.
Pressing Control down arrow will take me to the last row.
Joy A53.
Joy A53. So you see, the time I will have spent pressing down arrow, I can use it to do other things. So by pressing Control down arrow, with Control down arrow, we take you from wherever you are, wherever the focus is, up to the last cell containing data in the region. Now, how do I go back up to the first cell that contains data in the data range? How do I go back up? Is by pressing Control up arrow.
Name A1.
Name A1.
Name A1.
So you see, from the first row, I jump to the last row, and then from the last row, I jump to the first row. I should say that pressing this shortcut moves you from one end of the data range to the other end of the data range. So now, if I want to move to the right and I want to know the last column in the data range, right now I'm in name A1.
Name A1.
Name. I will just press Control right arrow to go to the last cell in the data range.
Comment D1.
Comment D1. You see? So instead of me pressing left arrow or right arrow until I get to the end of the column or the last column in the range. So this is a pretty and very fantastic technique. Now I'm in the last column. How do I get to the first column in the data range, the first column, which is A1 or column A? I'll just do Control left arrow, which is the opposite. Control left arrow.
1. Name A1.
Name A1. Now let me press Control right arrow to jump to the last column.
Comment D1.
Comment D1. So now, if you are on the last column or you are on the last cell in a data range and you press Control right arrow or Control down arrow, the focus moves from the data and goes down to the last row. So imagine you are I'm in cell
D1. Comment D1.
Comment D1, which is the last cell, last cell to the right containing data. If by mistake I press Control right arrow again, the focus moves away from the data completely up to the last column in the spreadsheet, and that is a lot of columns. In the spreadsheet, we have over 1 million columns and over 1 million rows. So let me press Control right arrow. Remember, I'm in the last cell in the data region to the right. So by pressing Control right arrow, the focus will move out of the data to the last column in the spreadsheet. Oh yeah, let's go.
D1. Accept D1.
Accept D1.
Accept D1. Accept D1. Accept D1.
Accept D1. So just with one shortcut, I'm able to jump over 1 million columns. Just imagine I have to be pressing right arrow to get to the end of the spreadsheet to the right to get to the last column in a spreadsheet. So now, if that happens, how do you find your way back into the data region? How do you find your way back to the data region? It's by pressing Ctrl left arrow, which is the opposite of Ctrl right arrow. So pressing Ctrl left arrow will move the focus back to the first cell from the right of the data region. So we have A to D. Because we are on the right hand side of the spreadsheet, we are on the last column of the spreadsheet. So when you now do Ctrl left, the first cell from the right of the data region, that is where the focus will be back on, which is comment D1. Let's go.
Accept D1.
Okay, let me press it now. Ctrl F, Ctrl left arrow.
Comment D1.
Comment D1. So now, because D1 is the first cell to the right of the data range containing column, pressing Ctrl left arrow will now move me to the first cell in the data range, the first cell on the first column, which is A1.
Name A1.
Name A1.
Name A1.
So if I press Ctrl down arrow, it will move me to the last row that contains data, or last cell that contains data in the data range.
Joy A53.
Joy A53. If I mistakenly, press Ctrl down arrow again, it will move me to the last row in the spreadsheet. Last row, which is row 1,040,000 plus. That is over a million rows. So let me do that. A104. That is 1,040,000.
104,8576.
48,700. So that is how many rows we have in a spreadsheet. So for me to find my way back to the data, I will press Ctrl up arrow.
Joy A53.
Joy A53.
Joy A53.
Now I can press Ctrl up arrow again to go to the first cell, the beginning of the data range.
Name A1.
Now name A1. So another technique I will also be introducing to you is jumping. So if you are in the data range and you want to know where the data ends, the last cell in the data, note the last cell in the data range. So suppose you have from A1 up to M100. Cell M100 is the last data range, is the last cell in the data. So this data begins from cell A1 and ends in M100. So how do you, if you want to know where the data ends, now this is not your file. I give you a file, help me work on it, and in order not to waste your time figuring out where the data starts from and end, so just press Ctrl End key to move the focus to the last cell in the data range.
Name.
So I'm in name A1. I want to go to the last cell in the data, the last cell in the data range.
A1.
So I will just press Ctrl plus End key. Let's go.
D54. D54.
D54. So Ctrl End will take you to the last cell in the data range. Anytime you are given a file, there are certain things you must know. You want to know where the data starts from, and you want to know where the data ends. Where the data starts from on the row, the first row of the data, and the last row of the data. The first column of the data and the last column of the data. Now, if you want to know where the data ends, the last cell in the data range, use Ctrl End key. Now, pressing Ctrl Home anywhere you are in the spreadsheet will always take the focus to cell A1, which is the first cell in the spreadsheet. Whether it contains data or it does not contain data, Ctrl Home will take you to the first cell. It's just like pressing Ctrl Home in a Microsoft Word document. Ctrl Home will take you to the first, to the top of page, top of document. So let me press
D54.
Let me press Ctrl Home.
Name A1.
Name A1. So let me go to the last row in the spreadsheet. The last row now, not in the last row in the spreadsheet, not in the data range.
David, Joy, a 54,
So I'll press Control down arrow.
a 104, 8576.
So now I'm in the last row. For me to press Control Home, or if I want to go to cell A1, take the focus back to cell A1, I will press Control Home.
Name A1.
Name A1. So in order to work faster, more effective and more efficient in Excel, make use of these Excel techniques. Thank you. See you in the next lesson.